For first service?
I mean, recently.
Well, for first service, actually piano is like too loud there. I just turn all the way down.
I don't know if vocals should come down a little bit to hear instruments more, but maybe it doesn't sound that way.
Well, if I turn it down all the way down the channel, maybe that's bad for the speed. You have to turn up the channel a bit. Because in the room, it's fine.
I was just wondering, maybe
it's
just the way it ends up on YouTube.
Okay, that's good to know.
I don't know. Maybe
we're going to do this town hall again with you. Yeah, I'll show up here about 5:30 get the place set up. Okay, thanks. Thank you for your help. You're doing me again, right? Good, thanks. Same shirt. Morning, Bandy Creek. So nice to see you. Good morning, Abigail. So nice to see you.
You say the same through the ages. morning, everybody. Please have a seat. My name is Justin. I'm the pastor here. Allow me to share with you a few announcements. As many of you know, this is a place where we like to have a laid-back atmosphere. Come as you are, but know that we come to hear some news and some information and even to worship Jesus Christ. And so we just appreciate you being a part of this. There's some beverages over there that you're more than welcome to get up and go grab a snack during the beginning time here. If you need a nursery, it's out the doors and to the right for kids age 3 and under. Later in the service, after the offering, for those kids that want to go to a children's church age 3 to 11, you will be dismissed to head out the back door, and they will be brought back in at the end of the service. And finally, back there you'll see the word happenings, and what that is a place where if you need more information about something, or if we ask you to go sign up for something and you say, yeah, I want to go sign up for something, that's where you head. A few announcements in the bulletin that was given to you this week. Feel free to grab one later if you need to, but we want to make sure that every kid who's going to be in 3rd grade this year gets a Bible during our fall kickoff that's happening August 19th. And so you'll see in there a phone number that you can text to make sure that we have the names of the kids who are going into 3rd grade. We're also looking to get the information of all the kids who are off in college. So if you know somebody who's going to college or has been in college the last couple of years, if you can give us the information that you have, we just want to make sure that we stay connected with them. And also, you'll notice in the bottom in green, in a couple weeks, we are going to have during the between 10 and 11 on Sunday morning, we're going to have a minute to win it time. The welcome team is going to be setting that up. If you are somebody who is willing to stand up front and potentially do something silly or challenging for 1 minute, we encourage you to sign up to do so, and there should be a sign up back at the Happenings booth. And then the final thing is, I'd love for you to direct your attention to the screen for one more announcement.
Thanks to those of you who attended our town hall meeting last Sunday afternoon. Whether you're able to be there or not, I strongly urge you to attend the next town hall meeting this Wednesday evening, July 25, 6:30 p.m. We live in a politically divisive time, and that broad cultural struggle is reflected nowhere more clearly than within the United Methodist Church. People not in our denomination, such as your friends and your co-workers, tend to paint us all with the same broad brush. It's only natural for them to assume that our church agrees with UMC political positions trumpeted in news headlines, even though we may in fact not agree. It is critically important that we understand the nature of this political environment and be able to verbalize where we stand. Avoiding this conversation will give your silent consent to an agenda you may find quite at odds with your own personal beliefs. The Apostle Peter told us to be prepared to verbally defend our faith, gently, respectfully, and with a clear conscience, 1 Peter 3:15. Even if you attended last week's town hall, come to this next one also. There may be questions and answers which will take us in a different direction than last time. This is an opportunity to not only explore the issues, but also to let your participation minister to others. We are a family here. Let's talk over these issues candidly and clearly and respectfully. See you Wednesday night. Child care will be provided.
Invite you all back to a town hall meeting that's going to be happening this Wednesday at 6:30. These conversations are a big deal, and we want you to hear what we're aware of, and we also want to hear from you what you think about it all. So please set that aside. But at this time, we invite you all to stand up and greet one another and let people know that you're glad they're here.
Please be seated.
Powerful song, amen? How great is our God that we have an awesome congregation here who supports our youth and everything here that we do. So a couple weeks ago, we got to take these 3 awesome kids, as well as 10 others who are not here, and I'll be getting to them soon. We got to take them all to Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It's actually a little town outside of Eureka Springs called Green Forest. It's a woodland Bible camp that Team Effort rented out. So all 13 of us got on the road that Sunday morning, along with 4 awesome sponsors. I guess I'm one of them. Yeah, I'm awesome too. So Jennifer Brundle, Cara Lefto, who we also used as one of the Lefto's vehicles, and Jennifer's vehicle. They came along. Weston Brundle came along to help out with the kids while Brent and I were on the work site.
Our
Oh,
children.
they're our kids, not mine. So they came along, Jennifer and Weston did, and watched Zachary and Zoe for us. So it was a blessing that we have awesome sponsors for our youth group as well. So we departed that Sunday morning. Everyone prayed over us, and oh goodness, it's flickering. I got it. Sorry for that. All right. So I'm going to pass off the microphone to Macy, and she's going to tell us about the travel.
Okay, so our first stop was in Independent, and it was at Big Cheese Pizza where we had pizza, and then our next we had there was a park on the way, and we did a train ride and a carousel, and then we drove some more, and there was a lot of sleeping and some podcasting in Tyler's car, and then our last stop was at Sonic. It was like 10 minutes away from the campsite, and we had some Sonic, and there was a homeless man there, and he shared his story with Tyler, and he prayed over him, and they just had a nice conversation. And then, what? Oh yeah, we gave him our leftover pizza that we had from the pizza place, and then we finally got to the camp, and we were assigned some bunk houses, which the boys were a lot smaller than the girls. They had some tiny beds and a very small bathroom, but the girls were fortunate enough to have an actual bathroom.
We didn't have doors on the toilet or the shower, and both of those happened to be, one was 5 feet away from Brett's bed, and the shower was 5 feet away from my bed. Fun.
And then we were given our itinerary for the rest of the week.
We had to wake up really early. Breakfast was at 7:15, and we always got there like right as they were moving through the line. After that, we made our lunches for the day, which was just a couple sandwiches, and then we went to the work site, and we worked for a couple hours in the morning. Lots of painting, trim, sanding, painting. And then we would have an hour for lunch at the chapel, which was right across the road from where we were doing lots of the work. And then after lunch, we would go back to work for a couple more hours, and then get back in time for a couple hours of free time. So there was a pool there. You could go swim or just take a nap in the cabin. Yeah, and so then they had pretty good food there. And then after supper, there was a couple hours to just do whatever. And then they had worship time in chapel at a tiny little church on the camp, which was really good. They had really good worship singers there, and always a good message. And then we would break into our own churches afterwards and just do whatever with our youth group. And then we were supposed to go to bed at 10:30.
Supposed to.
Yeah. And so that was pretty much just a typical day.
So our team leader, her name was Chloe, and she was a part of the team effort staff. And she was with us all week. She helped us on our work site and just told us what we needed to do and what we had to get done for the week. And she felt that God had called her to come to Eureka Springs, which she had been all over the place in the United States, just at the team effort campsites, helping other groups. And she was super nice. She played card games with us some nights, and she was just really fun to have around.
Yep, I guess that's me. Okay, so we worked at a place called Jeremiah House, and it is owned by Vicky and JR, their husband and wife, I believe, right? Okay, thought so. And it is a home for women that are recovering from addiction. And so it's a 2-year program. They basically have their lives scheduled out every minute of every day. And so the people that own the house also own the church that's across the street. So we did some work at the house and the church. The women, there were 4 women that were currently living there going through the program. While we were there, we were able to meet and talk with 3 of them. The 4th one was out for something, and so we weren't able to meet her. But the women actually worked alongside with the girls, or the kids, sorry, the girls worked alongside with the kids. So we got to hear some of their stories, which we'll tell you a little bit about here in a minute. But it was a really cool thing to see. So we were redoing their bedrooms, we were redoing their kitchen, and then some work on the church across the street, which we found out through one of the girls that most of the people that attended the small church that we were working on were recovering addicts themselves, and they ranged anywhere from about 20 to 40 members that would show up every week to come to the church. So it was a really cool outreach that we got to work on.
So we split up in different teams to get the house done. And team 1 was Megan, Macy, Ashlyn, Kelsey, and Alyssa. And they just had to paint all of the trim throughout the church and the sanctuary. And just tape it off, and 2 coats of paint is what it took to finish it. Team 2 was Evan, Isaac, Tyler, and me. And we painted all the kitchen walls, the kitchen trim and cabinets, and we stripped the cabinets of varnish, and then we had to sand every individual cabinet, and then we painted it.
It was a lot of fun. Team 3 was April, Delaney, Eli, Asher, Corinne, and Cara, and their job was to tape and paint trim walls, remove doors, paint those, prime those, and then once they got done, they were kind of roaming all over the place, helping out with all the other projects. So kind of some different highlights and stories. We did work for 3.5 days. We completed most of our assignments. I say most because my team that was responsible for the kitchen, we had to take off all the cabinet doors and strip them with a chemical stripper that only I was allowed to do, yay, and I only burned myself a couple of times. It was okay. So after we did that, then we had to sand them all down and paint them, and I say we didn't get that project done because the doors were not able to be put back onto the cabinets because we were painting in 100-degree heat, and it was 75% humidity, and so it just, lesson learned there, you should take it inside and do it inside. So praise God for a couple of things. There were no broken down cars, no injuries, no sickness. Brett had a slight injury, though. What happened, Brett?
We were cutting out some of the messed up paint on the cabinets with box cutters, and I just poked my finger and it bled a lot.
It was quite a bit of blood. We were surprised. We had to clean up a lot of the blood, but he was good. So then, Cara ended up on our first day. We couldn't find her keys.
I guess I'll tell this story. So she had set them down on their kitchen table. Well, then they were cleaning everything off so that they could actually, eat lunch at their table that had been moved into their living room because we were working on their kitchen. And we go to leave, and she goes to find her keys, and the table is completely clear. So everybody starts looking everywhere. We looked through every room in the house that we've been in. We spread out across the yard in case maybe they had fallen out. She thought maybe they were in her pocket. Nobody knew where they ended up. Looked in the church across the street, everywhere. Turns out one of the ladies that actually lived there had several sets of keys, and they looked very similar to hers, so she accidentally put them in her purse, and we were able to find them literally a couple minutes before she left to be an hour away from where she was at. So praise God that we were able to find those, and it was quite entertaining.
Cara had Justin on the phone ready to ship a set of keys to the campsite. Yeah, overnight them to us. Stacy was one of the ladies who I got to work closely with and got to know her. She shared her statement of faith with us and gave us her testimony on the last day. She was very emotional, but she had spent several years in and out of different rehabilitation homes, and this was kind of her chance to do that. She let us know that multiple times she had tried to take her life and suffered from extreme alcoholism. So she was trying to turn her life around, and so she went through an application process with the Jeremiah House, and she was accepted. It's a very faith-based organization, so she had just celebrated 1 year of being sober and was working on her second year. And then after the program was over with, she wanted to remain with the Jeremiah House to continue working with them. A lot of special thanks, and then we'll play a little slideshow here for everyone. To all of you who continue to support us, thank you very much. Special thanks to Cara Lefto for volunteering to come along with us and the vehicles, Jennifer and Weston, we talked about them, and then the parents of the youth, all of you, so thank you very much. And then Kim Tabor and Sandy Kuntz were our dinner providers on Wednesday nights. I always get that mixed up. Corinne corrects me all the time. So they are our dinner providers and clean up for us on Wednesday nights. Both of their kids are graduating. If there's any of you who want to volunteer to help out with that, that would be awesome and would be a tremendous blessing for us. Dates to remember, October 14th is our clay shoot, just another fundraiser here that we know all of you get really excited about. Other than that, kids, let's say one big thank you, and then we'll enjoy the slideshow. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
like to say a special thanks to Tyler and Corinne for leading our youth on this trip. I also want to make you aware that this past week, there's just been a bunch of stuff going on at the church, and we had Vacation Bible School, and it was the place here was just very, very different. It was all dressed up for Christmas here, and we spent the week teaching the kids about how the birth of Jesus impacts our life all year round. And we just got a couple of pictures to show you. You can see on the left there a bunch of kids sitting out in the hallway. There was 4 different stations. One of the stations was games in here. Another station was crafts in the room back over there. Another station was some drama and skits and teaching in that room, and then a snack time. And so we would be rotating the kids in and throughout everything that was going on. And then at the beginning and the end of each of our times, each of our nights together, we'd have this large group session. You know, behind all the cute kids, you'll see cute Taylor. I don't want to say that's not. I don't want to say cute kids and then Taylor. That just wouldn't be okay, right? But Taylor's in back. Taylor was one of the adults that helped in leading the kids with what was going on. And then you'll see on the right that that's one of the craft rooms that was going on. We had some adults that were helping with that. The top left in this one, you'll see we had our own Mary and Martha here at the church, and it was pretty exciting. They led in music. They dressed very, very well. And then Martha was one of the people that also led some of the skits that were going on and teaching the kids about the birth of Christ. It was pretty exciting. And of course, we had a bunch of adults who were helping, making sure that the kids had snacks each and every day that were themed. It was all very, very fantastic. We had 58 kids here for Vacation Bible School, and we had 31 adults who were helping. And I can't thank you all enough for being the type of church that just loves on our youth and our children in such a way that we will do all that we can to share Jesus with them and help them to learn how to share Jesus with others. And I also specifically want to, this stopped working. Can you get me to the next slide? Special thanks to Julie. Julie Link was the person who oversaw VBS this year. She put much time in preparing. We designed our own curriculum and everything this year, and it was just fantastic. And so if you see Julie later, she'll probably be all red-faced because I'm talking about her, but just thank her for her work in doing that. But God, thank you that this is a church that loves their kids, loves their youth. We want them to know Jesus. Now, thank you that we as adults are investing in them. We're doing all that we can to help them with that, God. And God, help us to be the type of adults that seek to live for you as well. That we would be all in for the things of Christ in this world and in our lives. Now, thank you for the blessings of the Benton Church and how that's what's important to us. Jesus, and sharing that with the world around us. And God, as we now move to this time where we share our tithes, our offerings, our gifts, would you help those of us who believe in the ministry that's going on here, help those of us just to give with a cheerful heart, thanking you for everything that we have and what this church does, and sharing Jesus Christ with the world. And God, may we be a people who also go home happy because we've given and we know that you will take care of us throughout the rest of this week. To you be the glory, God, for our lives and for the mission of this church. In Jesus' name, amen. Children are excused to Children's Church. taken some time to consider maybe putting a picture of high school Justin on the screen. And I decided not to do it because I think those pictures will be better served as ammunition later to humiliate myself. But what I want to share with you is the Justin that you see before you was not the same as the one who graduated from high school. Now, I may have been the same height, but whether or not you believe this, I graduated high school weighing 142 pounds. All right, and I was this skinny kid that could run around and do absolutely anything that he wanted. And and so I finished high school, spring of '87 that happened. I come back for Christmas. That same the winter of 1987, and the freshman 15 sort of happened to me, except I always do things better than most people. At least that's the way I like to claim it. And so I came back, and from in those 6 months, I had experienced the freshman 25. Okay, so I came back home, and I'm weighing just a little bit more than when I left. My younger sister, 4 years younger than me, she comes up, she's excited to see me, and she's looking at me like something weird happened, and she goes, I liked you more when you were skinny, right? And I didn't like that, so I hit her on the head and stuff like that. But from that point on, I just want to let you know, I am somebody who has struggled with his weight. There are times in my adult life where I've weighed more, and there are times in my adult life when I weighed less. So leading up to the day that we got married, I didn't tell my wife this, but I'm sure she noticed, I did all I could to try and lose a little weight so I could look very, very good in those pictures. But then after she said I do, it was like I said I do to her cooking. And I started putting on more and more weight. And I went from, I think I weighed 177 when we got married, to where I am now, which is a little north of 177. Now, some of you would say, no, you're like way far north. You're North Pole north of 177, right? You're where Santa Claus hangs out, north of 177. And you know what? That's probably true. And I'm not necessarily proud of it, and I'm making light of it right now. But personally, I get very, very embarrassed by my weight. I'm embarrassed of how I look. There are times where I'm ashamed of it, and there are times where I do okay with figuring out how to take care of it, and then there are times where I don't. We all know how to deal with being overweight, right? If you think about it, you know what to do. Now, some of us, there are health issues, and there are medical reasons why people weigh a little more. Some of us, there's some genetic issues that are involved in it as well. But if somebody like me wants to lose weight, it really boils down to a simple formula of diet and exercise, right? And if I would be willing to consistently diet and exercise, I would likely lose weight. And so I know what I need to do. I know the information, right? But I don't always follow through. I'll follow through sometimes, and sometimes I won't. I will let you know, because I'm talking about this and I'm starting with this today, I did not eat any cookies from the kitchen. We'll see what next week brings us, right? But I struggle with it even though I know what it takes. And I think prayer is the same thing for us. For many of us, we have heard how important prayer is, going to God and talking with God. We have been encouraged to talk with God. Some of us have even looked in the Bible, right? And we've seen where in God's Word He is telling us that this is one of the best things that we can do, that He's even commanding us to spend time in conversation with God. And so we know these things, but for some reason we just have a hard time doing it. Why is that? Why is this one of those things that we know would likely be a great habit for us, something that is second nature in our lives, but we just don't do it? Well, we're going to look at a story today of a lady called Hannah. And what I want us to do is see in her life when she decides that she is going to pray, and how she responds to her time in prayer and her life lived after that prayer. And maybe it'll begin to inspire us, or continue to inspire some of us, on what it means to be somebody who trusts God with their prayers. So Hannah is this wife of this guy named Elkanah, and Elkanah actually has two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. And Hannah was this lady who she just could not give birth to a child. She had tried and just never conceived, and so she really struggled with that. But Peninnah, the other wife, back in this time, a couple thousand years ago, she was the type of person that seemed to give birth to children all the time. So she's having all these kids, the type of girl that some of us behind the scenes would say, oh, she must be from a Catholic family or something, because she just keeps having kids and having kids and having kids. So that's the way that she was. She would think about children, right? And the next thing you know, she'd pop out another. And Hannah over here is struggling because in their culture, at this time, if you were female and you could not have children, it was often believed that God was cursing you for some sort of reason, that there must be some sort of sin in your life for you to not be able to birth children, which we know isn't true, but that's the way that they treated one another back then. And so Hannah is feeling the shame that she can't have kids. And I gotta let you know, I know that this is one of those topics where there are people likely in the room who've tried to have kids and have struggled and they can't figure out why we can't have kids and other people do. I don't know the answer to those questions. And I don't know why sometimes God answers some prayers and doesn't answer other prayers. I'm just being honest, I don't know. But what I want us to do is look at how Hannah reacts and responds to being in prayer with God. So Peninnah, the lady that's having all these kids, is looking at Hannah and starts making fun of her because she can't have kids. And so she's teasing her and deriding her and making her feel terrible about herself. And Elkanah, the husband, loves Hannah. Completely loves her. And so now they're at this point where every year they would go and they would offer these sacrifices at this temple in Shiloh. And while they're doing that, they sacrifice the animals. And the leftover portions of meat, what Elkanah would do is he would give portions to Peninnah and all of her kids for a celebration feast that they would have. And to show Hannah that he loved her so much, he would actually give her a double portion of the meat. He just wanted her to let her know that it is okay. I love you regardless. I think in this story in Scripture, Elkanah is a picture of what God is like. I love you. Even though you aren't able to do this thing that you think you really want to do or that you feel you need to do, I love you anyway. And Peninnah is teasing her and cutting her down, and they're having this meal together, and things are bubbling up inside Hannah where she just can't control it anymore. And Lord, as we begin to see this scene played out in your word, would you help us to be ready to hear from you, and not just hear, but be willing to put into practice the things that maybe we already know would be best for us to be doing. And may the words that I share and the things that we all hear be acceptable and pleasing to you. For you are our God and our blessed Redeemer. Amen. And so they're at this meal together, and Peninnah is still just teasing her and making fun of her, and Hannah has had enough, and so she actually refuses to eat during the meal. She is so sick and tired of this. And once everyone had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, it says Hannah stood up, and the impression here with the language is she has had it up to here. She does not want to hang out with these people anymore. She does not want to hear any of this, and so she is just tired of all that has been going on. And so what does she do? At this point in her life, she says, well, I am going to go to church, the temple. I'm going to go to church, and I am going to start talking to God about this concern I have. We don't know if she'd been talking to God before or not, but what we do know is at this point, she goes and she talks to God. And so she heads to the church, right? And now Eli is the priest. He's sitting by the chair of the doorpost of the Lord's house. And so the pastor's kind of hanging out at the door, right? And Hannah comes in, and she goes in, and she begins to pray, and it says that she is in deep anguish. It is to the core of her soul is what it means. How much she is hurting by what is going on. She wants this thing in life, and she's just not getting it. She can't make it happen, and she's so frustrated that she starts praying to God, and she's weeping bitterly. God, why can't I give birth to a child? And all of us, I'm guessing, has something in the back of their minds that we're a little ashamed about. Maybe we're a little embarrassed about. Like I shared about my weight and how I really don't like bringing attention to it. I wonder if you have something in your life that you just know that you've been struggling with. There's something that you're not proud of. And maybe, just maybe, you've had it up to here. Hannah, in that moment, goes to God, and she starts weeping before him. And Scripture says that she made a vow. It literally says that she vowed a vow, which means that she was so serious about this commitment that she is trying to say, I am going to be 100% all in on this. Everything from this point forward, my life and everything in it is going to be about the commitment to this, and I am going to follow through. And she says, Lord Almighty. And the word almighty here, it means all power, right? All sovereignty and all power. Now, I don't know if you ever read the comics, but there was a comic of Family Circus that I had seen at one point, and the dad is helping Billy with the homework. And they're in the kitchen, and you see the rest of the family around as well. And the dad asks Billy this question in regards to the homework. And the question was, what is the greatest source of power in the world? And so he's asking this question in the next cells, the next drawn squares in this comic. You begin to see the images of the rest of the family and what's going on in their head as they're trying to imagine what the greatest source of power is in this world. And so you're beginning to see images like the power lines that go overhead. You see that one of the kids is imagining a super fast race car just cruising through. One of the kids is looking at a thermonuclear destruction, right? The big bomb, the A-bomb blowing up. And then you see another person who's looking at Niagara Falls, and these are all the imagined powerful things in this world. And then the last cell, you see what the mom is thinking is the greatest source of power in the world. And you know what was drawn in that last cell? You see a picture of her thinking about her children kneeling at their beds, saying their nightly prayers. That, she thought, was the greatest source of power in this world. Hannah now, she is going before what she believes is the greatest source of power in this world. Lord Almighty, there's nobody who has more power than that. And she starts saying, God, if you would only look at this servant, I'm willing to humble myself, submit myself. If you would only look at my misery and remember me and not forget that I'm here. And I am asking you, God, and she offers her very, very specific prayer. Give me a son. Please give me a son. If you give me a son, and she starts to barter with God a little bit here, right? If you give me a son, you want to know what I will do? I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. No razor will even touch his head. And here's what I want us to hear in this, is she is making a commitment about herself. That what she is saying is, I am going to live my life completely for you, so much so that even if you do allow me to have a child, that I will live my life in such a way that my child will be given to you as well. Now, it was actually a law at this time that your firstborn child in your family had to put in some service time with the church. And so after your kid reached a certain age, they would go in and they would serve at the church for a few years, and then they would go back home where they could continue to learn the family trade. And what Hannah is saying here is my child will not go into service with the church just for a little bit of time and then come back and we'll just do whatever we want to do. No, my kid is going to be all in for the things that you want him to, God. So much so that he will take the Nazirite vow. And so she talks about no razor touching his head. And what that means is this is the type of vow that looks so different than the rest of the world. So these people will be wandering around, right, and their hair will never be cut. The Nazirite vow also meant that you wouldn't drink any alcohol, which was very common for them because the water was so bad at the time. And so everyone drank alcohol just to protect their bodies. The Nazirite vow also meant other things, like you wouldn't touch any dead animals or bodies or any of those type of things. The point is that this child will live his life so differently that the world will see that he belongs to you. I, Hannah is saying, will live my life so differently that my children will live for you. So she goes to God with her request, with her need, her desire, and says, God, I am all in. Please remember me. And so Eli, the pastor who's sitting at the door, is watching her, and she's crying and she's mumbling the stuff, and he actually thinks that she's been drinking, right? I mean, that's what the story says. And so he goes up to talk to her and says, "What are you doing, drinking and coming and hanging out in church and that type of stuff?" And she starts to explain to him, "No, what's going on is I'm just crying my heart out before God and letting Him know what goes on." And look what happens here. Eli, he says to her, he says, basically, thank you for sharing with me what you've brought before God. Go in peace. And may the God of Israel grant you what you've asked of him. You know what this means? It's like the preacher is now saying, thank you for sharing your prayer with me. I really hope God does what you're asking him to. Gives her some affirmation that God had heard her. And you know what? I hope he does what you're asking. Can I let you know that whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're praying about in regards to your life, I hope God answers those prayers. I don't know if he will or not, but I sure hope God answers your prayers. And that's what Eli's doing, is he's trying to show a sense of support. and then what Hannah says is, may your servant find favor in your eyes, which is her way of saying, well, I hope he does, because you just said that you hope he does, and I hope what you say is true. And she went away, and she felt different. Somebody encouraged her to say, God heard you, and I hope that happens, to the point where her soul, that downcast part of her, has now been lifted, and she's feeling okay. And so the scripture talks about how the very next day, God begins to move in her life, because she committed to be all in with her prayer, my life as well. And so the very next day, she ends up conceiving and giving birth to this child. She names the child Samuel. Do you know what Samuel means? Samuel means heard from God. And so she names her kid in such a way that everywhere that kid goes, every time that kid's name is said to anyone in the world, they will realize that Samuel's here because somebody believes that God heard them. And now she comes back. It's about 3 years later is what's estimated. She has weaned the child, and so now the child's old enough. She comes back to the church, and she says to Eli, right? She says, pardon me, my Lord. He says, as surely as you live, you may not remember this, but I'm the woman who stood here and shared with you that I was praying for a child. Well, I was praying for the child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. And hear this, because there is a repeated word here in the rest of this section. She says, I prayed and the Lord granted me what I've asked of him. So I now give him to the Lord, for his whole life will be given over to the Lord. What do we hear in her language? She absolutely believes that God was the one who made the difference in her life, that God was the one who chose for her to be able to give birth to this child. It's all about God. And so now she's saying, my prayers have been answered, and this is God's work in my life. It's not my own doing. It's not Elkanah's. Yeah, maybe we were involved in all of this, but it's because of God this happened. And she kept pointing her finger to God and saying, this is the one who made a difference in my life. I am all into living for him, so much so that I'm giving my child back to the church, just as I promised. And Eli, the pastor who was sitting by the door, right, begins to worship God as well, because somebody just kept pointing their finger to God and saying, God is the one who makes a difference in our life. And so God hears our prayers and answers as well. those, at least in this picture, those who are willing to say, God, I trust you with my life. And then Hannah wants to make sure that everyone understands that this is the Lord. And so she starts to explain that through a poem or a song that she just starts breaking out into. Now, I read this article about this 90-year-old woman who it was getting near Christmas time, and she's gotten to the point where physically it was very, very difficult for her to go out and purchase Christmas gifts for her family and her friends. And so what she decided this year is that she was going to write a check out to each of these people. And so she writes out all the checks. She purchases some Christmas cards, and so she starts filling out the Christmas cards, and here's what she writes in the Christmas cards. All right? What she wrote was, buy your own presents with an exclamation point, love grandma, or love, whoever she was sending it to. And then she takes the cards, right? She seals them up, and she mails them out, and Christmas comes and goes. And now it's after Christmas, and she's at her house, and she opens up her desk, and she realizes that all of the checks are still sitting in her desk. Now, think about what she wrote on those Christmas cards. Buy your own presents. Love grandma. Right? That wasn't her intent. As a matter of fact, she was hoping for something different. Hannah does not want us to be confused with the message. She wants to let you know where the gift came from. She wants to let you know where the power was. And so she starts to pray this thing, and she says, my heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord, my horn is lifted high, which is the picture of a strong animal with antlers, and they lift up their head, and when they do, it looks so majestic and powerful. She says, this is how I feel. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. God, you are the one who has done this in my life. You are the one who has changed me. And then she starts to talk to other people, to let everyone know there is no one like our God. There's no one beside him, and he is the rock. There's no rock like him, and it's this picture. Now, it's the military picture of building a huge rock wall so the enemy cannot come and attack you. And so what she's saying is God is the one who supports me. God is the one who protects me. God is the one who has done all of this. And I picture her now pointing to Peninnah, right? The one who's been making fun of her this whole time because she couldn't have kids. And she says, so she starts talking to her enemies, so to speak, and says, do not keep talking so proudly, or let your mouth speak such arrogance. You want to know why? Because the Lord is a God who knows, and it's by him deeds are weighed. God decides what God wants to do. And God chose to bless me by having a child. Now I am all in with Jesus, or I am all in with God. This was Old Testament. And so I give that child back to him. But that won't keep me from letting all of you know that this is God who did it. I read an article about Ed Sheeran. You know who Ed Sheeran is? He's this musician and songwriter, right? I think he's from England. He's actually now sold over 26 million albums. And he was doing this interview with PBS, and they were just talking about his career. And they asked him, this question about, where did he get his talent from? And hear his response to that. He says, I wouldn't classify myself as talented. I think you have to work for talent. Like, I couldn't really play the guitar or sing, and I learned how to do both. I couldn't really write a song, and then I learned how to do it. I think persistence is worth more than talent. I came to London and was not the best singer-songwriter or the best performer on the scene that I was in. But the more and more you work at it, the more and more you work at something, you give yourself no choice but to get better. And then he closed that question off with, I think persistence for me was the key. I wonder, for those of us that are seeking to live for Jesus and we're struggling with prayer, I wonder if persistence is the key. We know that it would be good, right? But what would it look like if today we committed once again to going before God in prayer, committing our lives to trusting Him with what happens, and then sharing what God does. Lord, help us to see and do what you are calling us to see and do, that we may live for you and trust you and show your love to the world around us. My life, God, is yours. Use it as you will. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for being a part of worship today. I want to let you know that each and every week, but especially today, if there's something that you want to be praying about, the front is open here. I invite you after the service to come up, have a seat, stand up, kneel down, and just express your concern, your heart, your desire to God, and then trust Him with your life. I will be happy to be the Eli in the story and sit over here on the side. And when you are done praying, I would love to, if you would allow me to, just come up and I will put my arms around you and let you know that God has heard your prayer. And let's begin to see what he can do in our lives. May I bless us as we make a decision about this, knowing he hears us everywhere, and give our day to him. Lord, help us to be people that understand you are there, and you invite us to come to you with however easy or difficult or challenging it is. May we share with you, may we trust you, and then may we live for you. And let's see what you will do with a life that is trusting you, even with our prayers. Go in peace, everyone.